Let's cross over now to Scott Lucas, a Professor of American Studies at the University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom. Always good to have you on the programme, Professor. Can we just begin with all eyes really on Pennsylvania, Nevada and Georgia and this potential scenario where the final outcome may be decided in the courts if President Trump's team has the evidence to present to judges? I mean, what's your reading of the situation?
Well, let's separate the political from the legal and the conspiracy theories. The political is that Joe Biden is likely to be confirmed as U.S. president today. And that is, as you began to explain, he is ahead in Nevada, and the remaining votes are coming from Democratic areas. So he should secure those 6 electoral votes, which if he holds his lead in Arizona, which you've already called for him, that already gives him the election. But he is almost certain to overtake Trump in Pennsylvania today. Trump's lead is only 18,000 votes now, and most of the remaining vote is from Democratic areas. And in Georgia, he does have a good chance of overtaking Trump. Trump's lead now is less than 1,300 votes there. And again, votes are coming in from Democratic areas. So any one of those gives Biden the victory. But what it then shifts to is the legal, and I'm add the conspiracy theory. You cited the legal cases where Trump's lawyers are just trying to block the completion and confirmation of the count in certain areas, especially in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada. They are trying to, as it were, influence the count in other areas, such as Arizona, to try to get Trump to tip that state. But what you had last night with the conspiracy theories, and you were being very kind in how you described it, Donald Trump really put out a series of falsehoods that the election is being stolen from him. He put out falsehoods about mail-in balloting, about observers at polling stations, about supposed mysterious ballots that had appeared for Biden. And then he added the conspiracy theory that this was being done by behind closed doors in a corrupt system. We know that he's going to try to go to the Supreme Court with this, but the danger of the conspiracy theories is a lot of people, especially Trump supporters, will buy into that. And that means you're really undermining the American system. And I have to add, raising the prospect that there will be trouble on the streets.
And indeed, of course, one would have to look back maybe 20 years, because when we look at what happened between Al Gore and George W. Bush, there was a huge legal battle in the days after the election to find out who really had won the election. What lessons have been learnt by the Democrats? We've heard a great deal about the fact that they've got legal teams. They've been building up their legal teams in the weeks leading up to this election to make sure that they can counter any sort of accusation or allegation made by the president's team.
It's great that you highlight that, because the Democrats, Joe Biden's team, have been preparing for months for this because they knew the prospect of a legal challenge might be there. So Trump's lawyers are there, Biden's lawyers are there. But here's the big difference from 2000. Neither George W. Bush nor Al Gore went into that election saying, I'm not going to recognize it if I lose. What occurred in 2000 was just that Florida completely mishandled its election, so we don't know who won there. In this case, Donald Trump said in July, I might not recognize the outcome of the election, and then laid the foundation by this series of falsehoods about mail-in balloting, hoping that when it came to this point, if he did lose, enough people will buy what he's saying so that it's not just the Supreme Court, but the American public demands that he is kept in the Oval Office, irrespective of the actual vote.
What does this tell us really about the election system in 50 states that have a very different system of not only issuing ballots, but collating and counting the votes, and how they count the votes and when they count the votes? Does electoral reform need to happen in the United States on the back of what we've seen during this particular election, highlighting how fractious it can be and how polarising it can and confusing it can be for the American public?
I think electoral reform is needed, but with the Electoral College. The actual voting system is handled by the states, not the federal government, and it's being carried out in the very special circumstances of the pandemic. And what we're actually seeing with the care being taken with this vote, and this is why it's taking so long, is that officials in those 50 states are really being careful to make sure that every ballot is legitimate, that nothing sneaks through. One statistic for your viewers: 0.0004% of ballots in American elections are fraudulent, according to the Brennan Center. That is a testimony not to the fact that the electoral system is broken, but that by and large it's working. And for people to really make sure it works this year in the pandemic, I think that should be applauded rather than denigrated.
Scott Lucas, always good to speak to you, and we'll be speaking to you through the day as we get those results and conclusions in some shape or form that come out of the US. Thanks for joining us from Birmingham in the United Kingdom.